Tonight's an evening with OurWorlds, the Qualcomm Institute, Design Lab, Qualcomm Gallery, and UCSD. And thank you everybody for making time in your schedules to be here. Tonight, we're going to open the evening with a blessing from former Palma Chairman and Elder Chris Devers. I'd like to welcome you up.
You're not going to record it, are you?
We could stop. We could stop the recording if anybody's recording.
If I can get you to stand, please. One of the things that we do as Indian people from this area, we come together, always acknowledge the past, reflect on the current, and look to the future. And it has gone on for generations and generations. So we start off, Tono non lo come vedete. Usciamo vici campo come tamam kanai koyam kanai kicham kanai pepayom kanai chame komach kamayu. Grandfather, we thank you for this beautiful day. We come together in a good way. We call upon the ancestors, the good spirits of the ancestors of the four directions, to continue to watch over us and guide us on our journeys. When we come together with good hearts. We remember all of our family and friends, those that we have lost, that have begun a new journey. We remember all those yet to come. And we pray for Mother Earth that she can sustain that next generation of her children. We come together as brothers and sisters of all races and creeds. We come together with prayer. We remember our active duty personnel and the veterans and the role that they play, especially those that have offered the ultimate gift, the gift of their life for the freedom of this country. We remember in our hearts and our prayers our tribal leaders, our state leaders, federal leaders, that they can come together in a good way, not for themselves, but for the people. They are there for the people. We ask the Creator above to watch over Mother Earth and the many nations that live on Mother Earth, that they too can come together in a good way, bring peace to Mother Earth, bring peace to mankind, that we can enjoy the gifts the Creator has bestowed upon us, those gifts of happiness, strength, guidance, understanding, and the ability to learn. We come together today to take that step, to continue to learn from one another in a good way, with good heart and good intentions. All my relations. Oh. What do you want me to say?
All right, thank you. Please be seated. And you can record from this moment forward. I'd like to make some acknowledgments to our hosts, UCSD Design Lab, and Professor Lisa Cartman, who's here, and Professor Dominique Rissolo of the Cultural Heritage Engineering Initiative. Closest person to Indiana Jones I've ever met in my life. For those of you who know him, he repels, he scans archives. It's just amazing. I also like to thank Ramesh Rao, who is the director of the Qualcomm Institute. Thank you so much for shining light on this important project. And also to Trish Stone, who's been so good and kind of a cornerstone of this whole event and everything that we've been working on. So thank you, Trish, for the day-to-day communications and facilitation. Would also like to acknowledge any OurWorlds contributors and supporters who are in the audience. I see people who've been with us for a long time, like Quinn Wilson and some other people in the audience who have been supporters of ours from the beginning. So thank you so much for always working with us and being there off and on in our journey. Would also like to thank the participants in OurWorlds who've been there also from the beginning. Johnny Bear Contreras, my cousin Dylan Luna, who's our musical composer, who's done amazing work, our design team and technology team, Catherine, and the team that she manages with, Maximilian Mack and Andrew Gant and Nick Pittum, some of the cornerstone of our technology piece. And then also a man who can't be here with us tonight, unfortunately, and I'd like to do a quick moment of silence for Stan Rodriguez, who's in the hospital again. Unfortunately, he was going to be with us on the panel, so if we could just take a quick moment of silence for Stan Rodriguez and keep him in your prayers. So the individuals who are here tonight on the panel, I'll introduce them in more detail in a moment, but they are great tribal visionaries who are leading the way for our people and carrying their culture and civilization forward into the 21st century. These are the culture keepers. Native Americans are not dead. We don't just live in history books. We're here contributing today. And that's an important message and something that's pervasive in our work. These culture keepers are carrying the torch of their civilization. Before we go into Beyond the Metaverse, let's start by answering the question, what is OurWorlds? So on paper, OurWorlds is a software platform that's focused on digital media, new forms of communication with emerging technologies with a very specific mission. And the mission is to capture, preserve, and share culture for content creation with an emphasis on geolocated content. But beyond the content value, our work has significant cultural and educational implications. OurWorlds was born out of my first company, which was OurGames, which was founded back in 2015. And the initial vision, which was published in the Tribal Business Journal at the time, was the use of virtual reality and augmented reality to bring Native American games to life for everyone to enjoy. I argued that Indian tribes in the United States had the sovereign right to use all available means of technology to push their sovereignty, and specifically their technological sovereignty, forward into the 21st century. And in this case, it was gaming sovereignty as well. Gaming is a part of our culture. Unfortunately, at the time, I didn't have the capacity, the backing, or the technological expertise that we found with Catherine and our technology team that we have now. So what I did is I went on the mobile handheld route for iOS and Apple phones. And in 2015, OurGames produced the first ever handheld mobile game based off of a Native American traditional game. As I said, games are part of our culture. And to my knowledge, it was the first time in Native American history, and correct me if I'm wrong, that culture was scientifically engineered and converted into software and then deployed into an interactive digital realm for Native Americans. Initially, there was some pushback. Because this is sensitive work, these games and this culture is built on thousands of years of relationships and tradition and culture, and it is a sensitive subject. And it's hard to push a civilization or a culture forward if you don't have the approval or consent or backing of the people. And my decision to digitize our culture sparked a good debate among tribal people. And at the heart of the discussion was, are we, as Native Americans, allowed to adapt and evolve our culture and our civilization in such ways? And so I did what is common, and I spoke with some tribal leaders and some elders, some of whom aren't alive today. And I sought their wisdom. And what they did was reinforce my conviction that our culture is not static. We don't live in history books, and we're not imprisoned by the past. It's our history and our culture and our traditions that ground us, and it's what makes us unique. However, we have the agency and the authority to determine our own future, and we must build that future. So OurWorlds is the evolution of OurGames, and OurWorlds is fulfilling the original vision of OurGames. The use of emerging technologies to build digital legacies and cultural futures for the next 7 generations. In 200 years, future generations can look back at a snapshot in the year 2023 to see how Native Americans were using emerging technologies in their nascency to preserve and advance their culture. I believe that OurWorlds is a best use case for emerging technologies. It's not a flashy Ford commercial, it's not an IKEA design, it's not drop an AR couch in your living room to see how it looks. These are real people with real stories, and these are powerful stories and powerful technologies on powerful devices that are creating powerful content, something a lot deeper than what you may be getting on TikTok and Instagram and some other applications that are wildly entertaining, but not always so deep. Along with the back-end software, our patent-pending workflow is in the realm of extended reality 360. OurWorlds is different because of our front-end visual design and the marriage of science and technology with culture. Again, we apply emerging technologies to many of these elements that comprise culture and civilization. So with this technology, we examine art, language, borders, music, stories, geography, maritime culture, so many things that comprise civilization and culture. And with this approach, and in our development, we work from the bottom up. We work with communities and cultural contributors with intent and purpose. We intentionally and purposefully engage and empower community members, leaders, elders, doctors, storytellers to participate in the process. OurWorlds would not be possible without the support of community leaders and the people who are willing to push the culture forward into the 21st century. Again, we know where we've been, we have our history, we have our culture and our traditions, and I believe that they should evolve with the time. We're always looking forward, not backward. We know about the history, we know the things that have happened in the past to our people. But what we want to do is stay focused on the future and building a future and building bridges between the past and the future with our present technologies. At this point, I'd like to stop and introduce Technology Officer and Co-founder Catherine Ng to talk more about her journey working in the Native American community and the technology process that we've co-created for OurWorlds.
Thank you, Kilma. That was beautifully said, Kilma. Thank you. And certainly I think of this project as a lens through which we can see and magnify many different aspects of culture. I grew up in New York in a small town called Setauket. We went to Minnesota Elementary School. There were streets in our neighborhood named Cayuga and Oneida. I went to school in Manhattan. We spent summers in Amagansett and Montauk and Quogue. And I must have said these names aloud to myself, my 11-year-old self, thousands of times. They just ignited my imagination. But this fascination may not have been much more than that. Fast forward to moving out to California, and the names are different. The languages seem different. There are different Native American names that I've seen from, many of you may already know. San Diego is home to 18 tribal nations, more than any other county in the US. And so one summer I met Kilma. I was teaching a STEM camp and he brought his son. He showed me the Peon game that he spoke about just now. And I was fascinated. I wanted to know, the game was very engaging and I played it again and again, but I wanted to know what the actual event was like. And it just so happened that there was an event at Santa Isabel Reservation the next night. I brought my son and we went, and it was really transformative. I had not seen so many people who had really kind of, it's hard to describe a Peon game. I mean, it's basically you just, at some point, I hope you all get to experience it. There are groups of people playing the game over open fires. There are, really a number of, games between people of different ages, groups of people of different ages. But what I was most taken with is the knowledge that the game requires. I mean, you're basically you're singing traditional songs. You're trying to do something sort of very clever with your hands, with your teammates. The opposite team is basically trying to guess who has the peon. It's a complicated game. Kilma asked me, what do you think? Peon 2.0, what's it going to look like? And we immediately thought it has to involve an immersive reality of some kind. An immersive reality where language and culture and the songs and really the presence of the knowledge bearers can be a part of. So we set about learning the technologies that it would take to do this. So what does this look like? Let me just switch gears here. I'm going to stop this looping video for a second. switch over to my little presentation here. What does the technology look like? This is how it basically evolved. Okay. So it seemed that a map, if we were going to create an application, would be an important part of what we were going to do. So here we are. These are the Kupa and Luceño and Kumeyaay territories of San Diego. So we'll just zoom in a little bit more. And you see there's this intersection here. Chairman Devers, you had a wonderful, you gave us a wonderful interview when you came to visit us in the studio. Right up here at the top is where all three tribes intersect, and it happens to be at the San Luis Rey River. This is what it looks like. There's UCSD. So let's zoom in a little bit. And the river will appear in just a moment. There it is. And so what does it look like? And this is Oceanside right here in the Pacific Ocean. You saw this on the looping video just now. This is what the river looks like facing the Pacific Ocean at Oceanside. This is what the river looks like further east and north on the Pala Reservation. This is footage that we captured using a Insta360 drone. And one of the ways that we wanted to try to preserve environments was just to find ways to record in 360. So we set about doing that in a number of different environments. We have some 360 cameras that are on loan to different communities around the country. We want to teach and really kind of share our workflows with community members who are interested in using these tools to tell their stories. Here's the Sycuan Reservation, a view of a Sycuan casino flying towards. But really, how does it all begin? So the first thing we did, just to back up a little bit, and you saw this is another drone shot of the Cove, which all of us know living here in San Diego. But it actually all began in August 2020 when we had our first volumetric video shoot. And there's Chairman Devers on the green screen. And we were really trying to find a way to create new types of recordings of people in the community who had wisdom to share, who were beloved in their communities, and whose presence could really inspire generations in the future. So we used the depth kit workflow, which it was very important to us to find a workflow that was going to be replicable in communities. It's not expensive. I think the going rate for technology like this, for immersive technology, virtual reality technologies, $10,000 a minute. We don't even come close to that. I mean, I think $10,000 was our entire budget for this shoot, basically. So, we are able to use, just kind of, it was a Blackmagic, SLR, and, Microsoft Connect, hooked up to the depth kit software from, Scatter. And this is a workflow that we can share with communities. You can just put up a simple green screen, record it, and then basically what you have is a three-dimensional video. Here we have a 180-degree video. The next shoot we do, we're going to have 360. We'll have more than just one Connect. We'll have three, and then we'll be able to have the type of video object that if you put it into a headset or, in the viewers of the future, Glass OS, any sort of, you could actually have the sensation of walking around the subject that you had recorded. So there's Chairman Cody Martinez from Sycuan. There is, that video didn't play, but that was Mandy Correa de Quintero. And we had a great time. This was shot here at UCSD. There's Chairman Smith from Pala with Kilma. Chairman Smith is his wife. So once we had the volumetric video, it was really kind of a journey of how do we, is that enough? Like, is the volumetric videos, can we put them in the spaces in this holographic form? on the phones by geolocation the way we wanted to. This was something that we'd all imagined. The answer to that was it wasn't quite possible to put the holograms. We like if you made them into point clouds, the point clouds were important because we didn't really want to have our figures and our subjects sort of feel game-like or doll-like, like they were in a game. So the point cloud seemed like a way to capture the energy and the presence without having to sort of veer down uncanny alley. So we also at the same time know that there are cultural objects that we would want to record. So we began to do some tests. AR kit, we stand on the shoulders of giants when we use the Apple AR kit and AR Core from Android. So and it's an easy workflow. All of this in service to the idea that we want to be able to share these workflows with the community. We have outlines of workshops that we want to do with K-12 students. Like we literally think a 9-year-old could do this. You just go take hundreds of photos of an object in the round. Here's a statue at Poway City Hall with Johnny Bear Contreras. He has created the sculpture. We basically recorded it. You put it into all these photographs into a mesh render, which is free. You go away for a couple of hours, and you come back, and you have this object. And that's, I think, a wonderful entry into STEM for kids. We're going to, in fact, present something at the Dream the Impossible conference here at UCSD, next month. And so it gets better and better. I mean, the more you are able to refine your mesh render, the better the objects turn out. So that's a scavenger hunt that we did at E3 Civic High here in San Diego. Here's a plate from Marta Rodriguez. I saw her come in. Hi. And really just the idea that you can record objects that are important to you, that are in your culture, and you can place them by geolocation where you want so they can be visible there and not elsewhere. Let's just sort of march through. I know we're running out of time here. But here is some of the other types of work that we have done. We've gone out into the field and recorded Dr. Stan, teaching the community how to harvest, how to build the boats, how to go out in the water with them, how to build iwas, harvest materials to build the shelters. And and that takes care of the holograms and the stories. That takes care of the objects. But what about the language? And so this app is still in a process of becoming. Language is an important part of that becoming. And so the idea that we're able to use ARKit in this novel way and produce language in a way that anyone who is familiar with a website can participate in. Here, we help Dr. Stan sort of draw a perimeter around the Kendall Frost Marsh Preserve. This is where this, and right now we've ungeofenced it so that it's possible to see it here, at UCSD. But another way that we are able to pin things is by just latitude, longitude points. This is something that we did at a technology conference here. Let's see, what else? And then we also, if any of you have tried the app and tried the, sort of geolocation, sort of territory recognition aspect of it, that to me was something, well, Kilma and I spoke about it. We're still talking about it. What is going to be the pivotal point where the app is ready to launch? We were in beta for 1.5 years, and finally, I felt that the use case of everyone in the country having something that was interesting to them, that they could discover in the environments unique to them, came about because of our partnership with Native Land and our ability to draw from their API, their Mapbox API, and basically provide you territory recognition. And it's actually, what does it look like? Here's another thing with the language. We're doing image recognition, and right now working with some with Dr. Stan mainly, to create image recognition that can translate the names of the objects around you. That's what we're looking at here. Above on the strip up there is just basically an untrained image recognition engine, which is exhausting itself trying to find and tell you what it's seeing. Below, we've trained it so that it will only recognize and give you the names of the objects that it actually knows in its lexicon. So it's sort of in alpha. This is what our pieces look like in the wild. Holograms, and here's our exhibition. So we're getting there. we really are so grateful to UCSD for supporting us in so many ways. This exhibition is really just one of them. But we think that just answering the questions of, why, how we can serve the culture has been really transformative, and that's really informed what this app has become. And this is a harbinger of things to come. Just some ways that we can get out of a device, get out of the iPhone, get out of an iPad or like a digital device of any kind, and project holograms in spaces. So some explorations. But with that, I wrap up. Thank you.
Good job, Minnie.
All right.
Awesome. We'll go back with the loop. Oh, are we going to need a password on this one?
No.
Oh, cool. At this time, I'd like to bring forward our panelists. First, I'd like to call up Eric Ortega, who is a culture leader for the Paula Indian tribe and Cupeño people. Eric is an elected member of the Bonsall School Board. He's also served with our culture department in Paula for decades. He has a radio show that has won awards. It is called Voices, Past and Present. Paula Life, Past and Present on 91.3 FM, KOP, is it still KOPA? Oh, KPRI, they changed it. Okay, so Eric Ortega is a cultural expert. He's carrying the torch. He's bringing our civilization forward in the 21st century. I've looked up to him for a long time. We go to tribal meetings together. We do different cultural events together, and he leads the charge. So I'd like everybody to welcome Eric Ortega from Paula. Next, I'd like to bring up a man who I served with when I was on the Paula Tribal Council. He was leading the charge for the Palma Indian tribe, the Luiseño people, and he's a veteran, an educated man, a culture leader, somebody who I've looked up to as a young leader. He led the charge for many different California and tribal initiatives. We'd sat across the table together in Sacramento, in Washington, D.C. He's worked with congressmen and legislators and senators, and the list goes on. And he's been an influential figure in not just tribal politics, but tribal culture. And again, for younger guys like me, when I first got elected to council, in fact, I remember one of my first meetings I ever went to when I was a young tribal leader. I was 27 at the time. And I remember, we showed up and, I was a little overdressed because I was taking stuff pretty seriously. And I said, "Is it okay that I'm wearing this?" He goes, yeah. Being professional is good. You got to step up the game for Indian country. It's okay. Thanks, Chairman Deaver. So anyways, that was in Sacramento. We were sitting there doing our meetings with the legislators. Anyways, I'd like to welcome former chairman of the Palma Tribe, Chris Devers. There's our musical composer. Dylan, stand up, please. This is Dylan Luna. He's our musical composer. Also from the Paula Tribe. Hi, Dar. Hi, Cedar. Good to see you guys here. And then I'll let Catherine introduce Martha.
And I would like to introduce our dear friend, Ana Gloria Rodriguez. We call her Marta. And she is the proprietor of the Coastside Community Market in Old Town. If you haven't had a chance to go, you must. You will not find these things that she sells in her beautiful store anywhere. Just really just priceless handmade items. She herself is a very skilled basket weaver, artist, and she's incredibly knowledgeable about ethnobotany, ethnohistory, tool making, very active in the community, shares her knowledge with people, and does a lot of good work both north and south of the border for the Kumeyaay people north and south of the border. So I'd like to welcome Marta. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll set the panel up in this way. I'll present kind of an overarching theme, and then we'll kind of dig into the weeds a little bit. So beyond the metaverse, Indigenous stories are all around you. So what does that mean? What can Indigenous knowledge systems teach us about immersive technologies and engineering the future? It's a question that you might wonder, right? What can Indigenous wisdom teach us? And it's more than you might think when you're building the future. For example, when we talk about the metaverse and we talk about virtual reality, I think there's a fundamental problem with staying inside your house in a virtual environment, living under the headset. This is problematic for many reasons. It goes against fundamental human elements, and our work with our focus groups actually confirmed that. People felt a little nauseous, they felt a little disoriented, they wanted to re-engage with their physical environments. And about 30% of the people reported that. So that's a large segment of the population of our focus group. And so at OurWorlds, we believe in immersive technologies, but we also believe in the power of the natural environment, the beauty of our planet, the beauty of our people, and our unique cultures. We embrace millions of years of natural evolution and its marriage to technologies like geolocation and extended reality. Ancient wisdom will tell you that knowledge and education and entertainment happens experientially in nature, not sitting at home or in your cave. You have to get out into nature to experience things, education, entertainment, and learning, knowledge transfer, if you will. And so that's where we begin our journey. And it's what most of our work is focused on, building immersive, geolocated experiences and bringing more meaning to the places where we live and we work and we travel. We're not so bad at virtual reality either. So our virtual reality film, Choctaw Code Talkers, was nominated as a finalist in the South by Southwest extended reality competition last year at South by Southwest. So our one venture into VR made it to the top of the XR food chain.
Our very first XR project.
So it turns out we're not so bad at VR either. But it's not where we believe the future lies. There's a limited place for that, but not for us. So imagine a world where education and entertainment unfolds around you wherever you go. That future is here, and it's only just beginning, because we're moving into a future where immersive content and immersive environments will become more prevalent. And I'm proud to say that we are pioneering in this space. Simply put, I don't think that there's much room in the future for humans to be fully immersed in their homes or virtual environments. I'll say it again. So I believe we must channel our work into enhancing the natural environment that's been perfected over millions of years. And the last thing I'll say before turning it over to our cultural experts is that the scope of this work is global, because culture is global. Everyone has culture. So whether you care about Native American stories or not, this is just where we're beginning. In the words of Dr. Stan Rodriguez, everyone is native from somewhere. So how is your culture being captured or shared with others? How is your culture being shared so that others can learn about it and gain tolerance and gain empathy and gain understanding about where you come from? True, we're starting with Native Americans, but the scope is global. Culture can be made digital in every community, in every country on Earth. So again, tonight we're joined by cultural experts and leaders in the 21st century who have collaborated with OurWorlds to create a digital Indigenous future. I've introduced our panelists, and now I'll turn it over to them and we'll begin the discussion. Cool. Test. Okay.
Test.
All right. So the question that got me going, and the thing that I would like to just begin with is, are we as Native Americans allowed to, or how do you feel about advancing culture in this way? Are we stuck in the history books? Are we static? Should our culture stay static? Or do we have the agency and the authenticity to move forward in these new ways? For example, I remember when Robert Levi made CDs of bird songs, there was some discussion about that. But let's talk about the marriage of technology and culture and how you feel about it.
Well, I could even go farther back than that from stories I've heard when Rissolo was recorded on cassette. Some people questioned whether or not she should be doing that. And at that point, she was an elder in our community. And it's those cassettes that became books, that became our stories, and actually the basis for our language revitalization program, which is what she was wanting in the late 70s. It was in the 70s when Indians were actually allowed to speak language in school. Prior to that, in some of the boarding schools, they weren't allowed to speak the language. I know one story from Sherman. There's a girl up there that when she was speaking her language in school, she was punished, and now she's up there teaching her language. It's changed over the years. And that was all like, I don't know, you guys might know the exact date or year, but it was like around 74, 75 or something like that. And at that time, it was kind of taboo to be teaching the language and learning the language in school. Now, we're getting the language back, and we're using a lot of that basis. But one of the stories Jane Hill told me when she was going to come down to Paula was that her boss told her, "Well, don't go to Nicholas Pena's house because he chased us out of there with a shotgun when we showed up on his property," because that's what they did. They didn't want to lose their culture by giving it to somebody else and have them take it. But she worked with Rissolo really well for several years to continue on with that. And I think we do have to. I'm one of those ones too. I don't know about. We've talked about putting our language on the website, and on the cloud, and have it available for people that don't live on our reservation, don't live in our community, to be able to maintain their own culture, not living in the area. And I'm one of those ones that has really mixed feelings about it, but I think it is the way of the future. It is the way of the future. So I do applaud everything you're doing there, Kilma.
Thanks.
Yes, I do. I come from a generation that, my parents and grandparents, those were the generations that were denied the opportunity to speak their language in school and so forth. And when you talk about culture, to me, our culture was based on survival. We, as the Indian people of this area, survived for thousands of years based on what Mother Earth provided for us. And to this day, protection of that culture, that way of life, is important to us. And there's always that underlying fear that when you give or pinpoint or show non-Indians certain medicines, plants, things that we hold close to our hearts, we will lose them. We've lost a lot already through development. This campus, somewhat of an example of what was here thousands of years ago. The river, San Diego River, San Luis Rey River, the resources that they used to provide our Indian people, we struggle to find. And when we do find them, we are hesitant to give that knowledge away. So when you look at the metaverse, and how do you, like you say, Kilma, how do you get our youth out of the house? Some areas here, and I can see, a good friend of mine, Mike Conley, in the audience. This area, San Diego County, was a playground to a lot of American Indian kids. We didn't really have a lot of boundaries. I mean, the whole thing was there to play, to ride bikes, to do whatever we did, just we had somewhat knowledge of, certain areas that we weren't supposed to be in because of the spiritual significance of these areas, what was there. A lot of people don't know that there are certain areas in the county that, Indian people believed opened doors to other universes. And I know amongst the Liseño, Payom Cowichum, that relationship that we have with Mother Earth and the people in the sky was important to our everyday life. And you mentioned technology. They have an app now you can put on your phone and say something. It'll show you where, the Big Dipper, the Milky Way, all these stars and areas are at in the sky. But there's stories behind those. There's stories behind them that, we don't even point to the stars. It's wrong to point to the stars when you talk about the stories of the three sisters and what they're doing up there. And as a representative from the Pama tribe, we have been fortunate enough on Palomar Mountain is up above us. And I think it was 10 years ago, I have my granddaughter with me here to kind of help me out on the time-wise, but we have 3 comets that we have out there that have been identified in the Liseño language, have been named. We have another one, an asteroid that Venus's sister that we have named up there in the skies. They're significant to us. But our greatest challenge is how do we pass this knowledge on to our younger generations? But more importantly, how do we protect it? Because once we lose it, it's gone. And I think that's something that you're going to have to work with, those that are involved with everything that's here. Because the stories are all around us. The native people with their creation stories and how they came to be. And there's differences, but there's a lot of similarities between the Kumyai, Payomkuchum, Copeño. We all carry a lot of similarities within us, but there are some differences. But I know I've had that opportunity, like with others, to meet with those old timers, the elders at that time, and what they shared, and how we were raised. And sometimes we were successful, sometimes we weren't, in passing those stories on to that next generation, and to believe and to understand, the religious aspect of who we are as Indian people and the beliefs we carry within us.
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman Devers. And a couple things came to mind when you were talking. It's when we were digitizing the Payon game, I just immediately knew that there were certain aspects of it that can't be touched. So, I used cartoon bears, and I kind of just gamified it in a sense that wasn't too realistic, because I didn't want the likeness to be too realistic, because there is a sense of magic and a sense of really special energy that goes on at these Payon games that cannot be captured by certain technologies, and at that time certain technologies, and shouldn't be. And so that's kind of, I think, at the heart of some of what Chairman Devers was talking about. And at OurWorlds, that's part of our process that I think that makes it unique, is that we only tell the stories, and we only tell we only share the culture that is willing to be shared by our contributors. We don't overstep that boundary. That's something that is, very much ingrained in our process, is to respect the cultural boundaries that exist. Because once you destroy that trust, I was just talking with Dominique about this. Once you kind of once there's something that's breached, then you can't really go back from that, and that's something that we talk about.
I just want to add one thing,
Yeah.
and you're talking about the Payon games.
Yeah.
And it's more than just the game.
Yeah.
The songs
Yeah.
play an important part because they're teasing one another and they're using the songs to call for strength when you're making your calls on the peon game. You know, the songs are important. And so it's not just the individuals behind the game singing a song. There's a meaning to each one of those songs and what they're trying to, overpower
Yeah.
the opposing team. So they, and back then, when years and years ago, there wasn't a lot of money out, and money would be put into a pot. You're playing for money, and you're going to do everything you can to make sure you come out successful, because that's meals. That's meals somewhere down the road. You're going to have to go hungry if you lose.
So the song. So when I was developing Payon, the sound designer came with, and he wanted to record. And I said, "Put that shit away." I'm like, "You're not going to record these songs." He's like, "Well, how are we going to get?" I said, "Look, maybe we can get permission later. Some kid songs or something." So yeah, that was like a hard no. But not everybody would respect that boundary, and so that again is what makes OurWorlds special is our cultural connection and how we try to maintain these boundaries between what we do. And this is a bigger discussion, right? Like, how do you responsibly capture culture without crossing the line? And I think that there's a lot of people that would want to go out and do this work and overstep that boundary and just shoot themselves in the foot immediately. So I think that this is like one of the unspoken magic secret sauces that we do is to sensitively do this work. Another thing that Chairman Devers brought up that I think might be going overlooked even here at this university, the Kumeyaay culture is strong, but the San Luis Rey River was that highway. And a lot of people talk about Kumeyaay being, I've heard it said that the Kumeyaay culture was the only one that had maritime history here in San Diego, and that's not true. The Luiseño and the Cupeño, our headwaters from Warner Springs, they followed that San Luis Rey River right down to Oceanside and traded with the Kumeyaay. And they were out there playing with the dolphins. So, one of the things that's important to note is that, the three main tribes in the area, the Cupeño, the Luiseño, and the Kumeyaay, had a long history. And they were brought together by the San Luis Rey River. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that that's how it was told to me. And the Kumeyaay borders go south of the border. Mm-hmm. There's the Kumeyaay. The border wasn't here hundreds of years ago. The Kumeyaay had migration routes all north and south of what is now Mexico and America.
One thing, and I know you have the opportunity to speak, but you can't just focus on San Diego County, Riverside County, and the Santa Margarita River, which is part of the ancestral territory of the Luiseño as well. And to some extent, those tributaries to Santa Margarita would bring in the Cahuillas to the north of us, the northeast of us. So there's four there. And then when you look at the northern aspect of our territories, there's the Juaneño up in that area. So, it depends on where you're looking, you'll find something.
Yeah, it's all connected.
It's all connected.
Do you want to speak a little bit about the border between and the Kumeyaay and your experience? Mm-hmm. Sure.
Sure. Well, ako tipel shames niya Ana Gloria o Marta Rodriguez nishi niya hilikupo nashes piit nipil. Hello everyone. So yeah, I'm Kumeyaay from San Jose de la Zorra. San Jose de la Zorra in Kumeyaay is Mat Prahao, and that means the land of the foxes. And then it's in San Jose de la Zorra is between Ensenada and Tijuana. It's like inland, maybe 27 kilometers from the Pacific Ocean, close to Rosarito. And then, so yes, working with the elders over there and with the language and the culture and the importance of the technology. When I was very young, I was a preschool teacher, and I was working with one of my great aunts, and she was like, she don't like people take pictures or record her and stuff like that. So one time I was like, kind of put my recorder in my jacket like that, and I was trying to record her, and she was nothing come out. She was like I told you already, you know. But she was like, she had that power to be like, you know, you want to play? Let's play. She's like, you cannot take it. And she's like, you know, I know what you mean because you want to teach the kids. It's like, you can come every day to my house and I will teach you. He's like, you know, it's important to, in the future, to, you know, record all these things to pass to the generations. But the more important time right now is you to hear with me. And then later, if you want to record and write it down, you can do that. But right now, the time with the elders, that's more important. And then I was like, you know, I was like, wow, you know, she's like, really, I was learning from her. So I was very lucky. It was like, we had like peon songs. Like in Baja, we don't play peon for years, you know. And then I was like, oh man, she was like, we have our own songs for peon. And then, but you know, same thing, we have our like traditional, you know, traditional gatherings and stuff like that. And I have all the stories my mom and my grandma told me. I was very lucky. I have 4 generations when I was young, and my great aunts, so they didn't speak Spanish or English, just Kumiai. And I was just helping them, you know, in the kitchen, grinding acorns, so, you know, so on. And then, so it was just a natural way of teaching. And then, so later on, when I moved over here to San Diego County, I was like, you know, knowing the elders over here, I was so happy because I feel like you know, like home, you know. So a lot of the elders knew my mom. And then I hear the same stories. Someone like, so this is real, you know, this is here for thousands of years. You know, I was like, wow, this is like, you know, just very humble and honored to have, you know, be in the table with you guys. Thank you. Yeah, hon.
Very good, very good. And, you know, you talk about the peon game. And I know a lot of the tribes are bringing back shinny. And it's like a field hockey, homemade sticks, a homemade ball, and everything like that, where you don't need music to. You can animate it. I don't know if you've seen the shinny game.
Yeah.
You know, we're trying to introduce that to the kids, and more importantly is to get them outside. You know, Mother Earth, you know, provides that air out there that is, you know, builds you up and keeps you safe, and activity and everything keeps your heart moving, and, you know, because we have to look at is the overall health of our Indian people, our Indian children. You know, what do we have to do to engage them so that, you know, they're not stuck in a room or somewhere out there, but they're out there doing something. You know, like I said, this whole area was a playground when we were growing up. And so it's, you know, something we don't want to lose. And it's not only for the Indian kids, it's for, you know, all of our kids. Is, you know, how do we get them out there? How do we get them exposed to different things?
Yeah, so that's the danger of the metaverse, and that's why we're trying to go beyond the metaverse. The metaverse is interesting, and there's a place for it, but I don't think it's the future, because it is dangerous. You don't want people, the king of their kingdom, sitting there in their underwear in their bedroom, you know. And it's true, like I read the articles, like people aren't interested. I mean, limited amounts, but not forever. So what we want to do is engage all the evolution, the beauty of the planet, the beauty of the people. I mean, imagine being at La Jolla Shores and experiencing like some educational content from the people who've been there thousands of years while you have your picnic with the sound of the waves in the background from the people who've lived there for thousands of years. And again, it's not just San Diego. I mean, this can be done anywhere. You know, India, could be done in China, could be done in, you know, South America, Africa. There's no limit. There's no limit to the amount of culture that can be documented across the globe. And there are special considerations, but done right, I think that we can share culture in this way. I think we can share culture in this way and bring about better understanding of people, cultures, traditions, so that we can help people empathize with other cultures and begin a peace process. I mean, really, we could do peace building. We're doing bridge building, but through bridges can come peace.
Just one.
Yeah.
You're going to have to catch up with YouTube. Somebody made the mistake and showed me how to do YouTube. And, you know, I can look down and there's down across the border some of the Kumeyaay. And they're on there singing their songs and everything like that. You know, every once in a while you'll get an indigenous group from Africa coming on there. They're doing their dances. South America, you know, they're on there. And what struck me as interesting that Kilma opened up with, you know, we have a room this size right now with different cultures in it. What is the non-Indian culture? You know, what is being displayed there? How do you define that? You know, what is it? So, but you know, YouTube is it's something else. I'll tell you.
tool right
Yeah. You know, you wouldn't believe half of the things you can see on YouTube sometimes.
YouTube is awesome, but it's like 2-dimensional. And so we're going 3-dimensional and beyond. And so, yeah, your story about the recording and how nothing came out, that has happened to me.
Oh,
Yeah, it's happened to you too, Eric.
Yeah.
There is like a magic that exists that you wouldn't know unless you messed with it.
My cousin tried to record us, and we were singing some of our traditional songs, and you know, sitting at my aunt's house, and he goes, "Oh man, this is going to be great. I got you guys recorded. You know, I can begin to learn the songs." I said, "Yeah, you go ahead." He got home and didn't record anything.
It's
Yeah,
happened.
you
It's
know.
happened to a lot of us.
And it happens.
So
But
when-
it falls back to the strength of the songs,
Yeah.
the language,
Yeah.
and what they carry with them. And some of them, you know, under general specifics, probably weren't meant to be recorded, not at that time. And there's a time and a place for that. And you look at, you know, you talk about cassettes, and you know, we go way back into the 50s and maybe even before, when they first developed the reel-to-reel. And those recordings there, and some of the ancestors at that time were concerned. They didn't want to lose the songs. You know, some of my uncles said, you know, you can only do so much because we've lost a lot in our religion and in our songs. But my wish is that these songs never die. And so we still carry those songs as, you know, the singers that sing our ceremonial songs. You know, and pass them on to, you know, my kids and my nephews, you know, passed on that ancestral dance to our nieces, you know, around the fire. And it's not just a dance, but it's also a rite, because you're controlling the fire. You're controlling the spirit of the fire. And the significance of what the fire and that circle means within our creation story, where the first death occurred for our people. So there's a lot of things out there that, you know, are important. And a lot of things that, you know, really have to be careful of, you know, how we move forward.
So I got 2 people in this room, and I'm glad you're both in this room, because you told the story, and then, well, an event happened, then you told the story, and we got a witness in the room, and we're going to talk about this right now.
What happened?
So
What'd I do?
Do you remember during our during our studio shoot, and we were asking you a little bit about culture, and you told the story of the owl up on the road, on Paula Temecula Road toward the top, and the owl that would come down. I killed it with a car, and there was a passenger who was in. So this is like, I mean, I got to talk about it because it's a story that, this is no joke. Dar, in the black Hummer.
You killed it? If you were with him, it was a team. But it wasn't an owl.
It was an owl.
It wasn't an owl. No, my story wasn't about the owl.
Oh, I thought it was an owl
No,
that would swoop down.
No, there.
Oh, well, we killed a bird.
Yeah, you killed it. But the owl is a messenger. He's a messenger. The one you got, probably not leaving any more messages.
Right.
But that story, you know, coming down from Pachanga to Paula, there's a corner that at nighttime you'd come down that road.
That was
and
the
there'd be
corner.
a blackbird. It wasn't an owl, it wasn't very big. And that bird would fly right in front of you. And you'd listen to see if you could hear a little thump. Oh, I hit that bird. And that bird would look like it's flying up through your hood of your car. And it was. And I've had it happen. And I made it home and got bad news. That was a death messenger, that somebody in your family was going to pass. And it did. And it happened. So, I mean, there's, other stories similar to that.
It wasn't long after we hit the bird that I drove my Porsche off the cliff there. True story. I got another witness.
The owl got you
were
back.
there for that too.
The owl got you.
Yeah, I drove my car off a cliff right then, like not long after I hit this bird. So these stories are real. They have power. And those are kind of the things that we don't touch and we don't document and we don't, I mean, we talk about it here in a closed setting, but this isn't something that would be there for everybody. So again, that's that line that you don't really cross. I'll talk about it because it happened to me, and he'll talk about it because it's our culture. But, these are some of the more powerful things that shouldn't always be crossed. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but...
Well, I know we do have some things there that happen in Paula and stuff, and I've always considered myself an educated man, and in tune with myself and the world. I remember one time I was working a security shift, and I was my job was to check an abandoned church. The church had a congregation that got so large they actually built a new church. So they had the church they had left behind. They were thinking about what they were going to do with the old church, and the church, they had like a little bit football field, and I drove by there and stuff, and the weeds had all grown, the grass had all grown up to where it was coming to seed. And so what happens when the grass comes to seed? All the rabbits come out, and at nighttime when you spotlight the field like that, all you see is those little red eyes from the rabbits. And I know something about the color red, huh? And I went around the school area of the church to the front part where the church was, and I was getting ready to get out of the car to go look at the windows and doors, check the windows and doors, and I looked up at the top of the church, and there was an owl sitting up there at the top of the church. And, well, like I said, I'm an educated man, but, I got back in my car, and I marked it down all secure, and I drove off. I had a very bad feeling about going into there at that time. I didn't go to that church. It was a different church, different religion than mine. But, it was definitely one of those situations where I wasn't going to try it, see what happened there.
Yeah.
But, different cultures have different taboos. One time I was over in Arizona at this conference for the radio station, and we were going into town. They got a bunch of us put in this van. We're going into town, and of course, they always let me sit in the front because I don't fit very well in the back. So I was sitting in the front, and as we're going through there, going into town, this coyote ran across the road. And, for me, I've been associated with Coyote Clan as far as, culturally in the reservation. And so I just kind of like joked around about how, hey, look at coyote, because what a coyote do is when it runs out into the lights, it'll actually look at the car and then take off running. So I said, hey, look, coyote looked at me and smiled at me and said, I'm going to be safe. And then it ran off. Well, unfortunately, there was a young lady behind me that was Navajo. And for Navajo, it's a very bad thing. And she goes, well, I'm Navajo, and that's a very bad sign for us. And I turned around and I said, well, he said I was going to be fine. He didn't say anything about you back there. But she didn't take that too much as a joke, though. But, for their culture, it's a very bad thing.
Yeah.
But one thing that they were telling me about their culture, and I can't explain the philosophies behind their culture, but what she said, the practice is they would have to wait for someone else to cross that path before them. And since I was in front of her, I go, well, I'm crossing the path before you then, so we should be okay. But and everybody did turn out fine that night. But it's one of those things of the different cultures that are like very taboo. I remember we were talking about doing emergency broadcasting and getting alerts out and stuff, and somebody mentioned about how instead of using like a ringing bell or something like that, we could use, this is California, we're talking about a group of California media Native Americans, and they were talking about maybe the howl from a coyote might be a way to awaken people and let people know there's something there. But I go, but if we have any Navajos in the area, they wouldn't like that if we were to broadcast the howl of a coyote, to tell them. So it's not so easy to just say, well, in our culture, the coyote howl is a nice, wake up call or whatever. In some other cultures, it's a very bad sign. So we have to be, sensitive to everybody's culture as well.
Okay. Let's switch gears a little bit. We're getting, we're past the halfway point here, but let's talk quickly. So we've covered the basis on culture a little bit, and we've heard from cultural experts, but let's talk about the future. And this is always fun because it's speculative, right? This is theoretical. This is, there's no right answer. What is the future? What does it look like? So maybe I'll just kind of run down the panel here. And again, there's no wrong answer. This is theory, speculation. But Eric, when you talk about Native Americans are a finite resource, right? We're eventually, we're I don't want to use, we're just, time is going to go on and there's going to be less and less of us, I guess is a sensitive way to put it. So let's fast forward 200, 300 years. What does Native American culture look like in the future? What is a Native American of the future? Talk about Native futurism a little bit for me, Eric, and then we'll just kind of work our way down.
Well, we're always talking to preserve our culture, and culture is not just a person's practice or an individual's practice. Culture is actually, well, as Chris Devers there said, culture was about survival. So it wasn't just a matter of things you did, but it was more like why you did those things. And when it comes to culture, it was a relationship between the people and the environment and each other. There was a way to do things that people were in agreement with that you didn't have to challenge anybody because it was just the way we did things. And there was a history and a philosophy behind the way we did things. So now, COVID came around, we had deaths in the community. I remember people talking about how, well, we can't practice our culture now. Well, you still can. The culture is more like the philosophy behind you did things, not behind how you did things, not exactly the practice of what you were doing at every time. We couldn't share food together. One of the things I noticed was, Ms. Devers, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I know one of the things that was practiced was they said, we can't provide food for the family and everything during a wake and all these different things. But, the practice wasn't really about providing food for everybody. It was about providing food for the people that came the long distance to get there. We made sure that they had a place to stay and a place to eat. That was what it was for. It wasn't for the people that were right there in the local community. In fact, the local community would get together and provide for these people that traveled the distance. And, so as long as that philosophy was still in effect, we were still practicing our culture because we still had that understanding of how we were supposed to be together and, mourn together and show support for each other. It wasn't about being able to have a big feast for everybody. And I think that was some of the things that during COVID and everything, you had to cut the culture down to the bare minimum of the philosophy behind the cultures, and not just because we can't practice things the way we had in the past, we were still able to maintain our culture by knowing the philosophy behind our culture. I was at an event one time where the veterans were, and it was advertised, veterans are going to provide breakfast for the community. It was the veterans' breakfast. The veterans got together and they were providing for the community a breakfast. And I remember I was sitting at a table one time and one of the ladies came up to me and she goes, well, everybody's going up to eat and the veterans are sitting over there. Shouldn't the veterans be served first? And I go, no, that's not the way it works. And they go, well, why not? The veterans are always served first. I go, not when the veterans are providing the breakfast. When they're providing the breakfast, everybody eats before them because they're the ones providing the breakfast. So that's the way the philosophy works. And my cousin Helen, very classy lady, she's 90 years old. And I went to her house. I was visiting with her and, me talking a lot. So I was there about 3 hours visiting. And I know about an hour and a half into it, she was like, Eric, you want a soda? And I go, yeah, I'll take a soda. So I started getting up. She goes, oh, no, don't worry about it. And she got off the sofa and she went and got me a soda. And then she came back and I go, Helen, I would have went and got my own soda. And she goes, Eric, I can still do that for you. I can still do that for my guests. And I was like, because that's what you did. When somebody was in your house, you provided for them if you were able to. She's 90 years old. She's still able to do that. I can't take that away from her. I can't tell her, no, you sit down. I'll wait on you. In her world, when you're the providing, when you're the provider, you provide for them, even if they are younger. Because that's, again, part of the culture, but how you do it, because it's who's giving that's the important person, not the one who's receiving. So
it's an important point. Thank you so much, Eric. We'll take questions from the audience here, and we'll get through a couple more with the panelists. To be mindful of the time, let's put our responses at about 2 minutes or less, if possible. Martha, same question to you. Let's talk about the future. What is let's fast forward 200 years. Let's talk about what does Native culture look like in the future? What is a Native futurism or Native American of the future? What vision do you have?
Well, I hope we can keep going for thousands and thousands of years with our culture and our language. And I guess technology is a great tool to keep the culture and language alive. Like I say, like I see the kids are playing games and stuff like that using the technology. We can put the language into those apps, that help the kids. And then I have, hear recordings from like 100 years ago, and I can understand when they're talking in Kumeyaay. Thank you to that tool. I can listen to the elders that like 100 years ago, and then 50 years. And then, so I think, when we're like not here no long, but the next generation, they can hear the recordings and see the videos. If we're like teaching how to make baskets or how to cook traditional foods and stuff like that, they can see those videos, so they can, learn from those videos.
Yeah.
But hopefully we have people, in our communities to learn, so they can teach in person. But like I said, technology is a great tool to keep it going.
Again, digital preservation
Yes.
and sharing and documentation.
Mm-hmm.
I want to welcome on the panel our musical composer Dylan Luna, who he's a new voice, he's a fresh voice, he's of the younger generation. So I've got a couple questions for you, real quick, and if you could limit your answer to about 2 minutes or less for both of these. The first question, Dylan, what are your thoughts about OurWorlds? What's it like working with OurWorlds? Tell us a little bit about how you approached the work with OurWorlds, with the music. Tell us a little bit about your inspiration behind your work and your thoughts about digital culture. And I think you walked in a little bit after we asked this question, which was, do we have the right, the agency to digitize and document our culture in this way? I know there was like a ton of questions in there, but just let's break it down one by one.
I'll do my best. Okay. Hello, everybody. I just put a bunch of these away yesterday for work, so it's funny to be talking on one. So how is it for OurWorlds? It's a good time. It's really interesting to be involved with. I think it's the future in terms of like 200-300 years. I don't know what it's gonna be like. Anybody? No? But it's like anything else. It's about adapting, and this is all a part of adapting, and if it's adapting and it's going to grow, it's going to grow because it's alive. And I think all this preserving and the recording, I think it's mandatory. Yeah, but I'm younger, so all this technology stuff is, I'm very pro technology. So, record it all.
Yeah, that's,
And as far as the music goes, I mean, it's hard to talk about the process because it's just so like in the zone and just like it comes and it just has to get put down. It has to get recorded. So, but it was always about like stuff like that, things like that. That's just like, how can I enhance that? How can I, help bring it to life without getting in the way, without putting myself before, the culture. And that's what it was about. And I think that's what this whole thing is about, which is really important.
yeah, putting the culture and the people first.
Exactly.
I think that we run into that problem with technology a lot. I think one of the problems we run into is, does technology serve us or do we serve the technology? And too many of us serve the technology when it should be serving us. And I think that that's one of the beautiful things about the OurWorlds project is that we're looking at technology and how it can serve communities, serve others, not necessarily us, blindly typing in our search history into Google and Facebook and Instagram so that they can generate the algorithms to tell us what is next in our life. Does that make sense? So I'll pass the baton to Chairman Devers about digital future, Indigenous futurism, the Native American of the future, the culture of the future. What vision do you have? No right answer. It's just, what do you see?
He'll still be here.
Yeah, I'll still be here. When you sit back and you look at the past, 200 years, 200 plus years, there was or even further back, there was a distinction between the Kumyais, Luceños, Kupas, Kuias. That has all changed. That process has already begun. My father was a tribal chairman for the Mesa Grande band, so part of me is Kumyai. My granddaughter is here in the audience with us. Kumyai, Luceño. She has ties to the Navajo Nation. So my vision for the future is that the tribes in Southern California, San Diego County, even across the border, will begin that process to come together as one. And there will be differences in the way that our language, our ceremonies, the songs, our ancestors grew up. My grandfather grew up speaking Kumyai, Luceño, English. That was and it would benefit, our next generations to learn a little bit of those languages, because eventually you're going to carry that history within you. Not just a single one, but multiple cultures. And that will continue on. And I'm going to go way out on a limb. These historical, tribal, ancestral lands of our people will gradually come back to the first peoples of this country. It'll start somewhere. But, that's my prediction for the future is, this area one day will revert back to those first peoples. And similar to other areas, that borderline will be a borderline in just a picture. You can be able to cross back and forth. And I know people are uncomfortable with that. But long time ago, we didn't put that line there. Somebody else put that line there. And there's resources that have been traded up from those areas all the way up to, North San Diego County. And so that's my prediction.
I like it. And I'll ask myself the same question, then we'll turn it over to the audience for questions before we convene in the gallery with refreshments. And for the future, what I see, and there's some data to back this up. I think that we're in the period of a renaissance for Native American people and for indigenous culture. I think people out there are inspired by us. I think that people are searching for more. I think that as you see TikTok and Instagram and all the influencers of the day, it's shallow, it's not very deep. And so when people see our culture, they see something deeper, they see something with meaning. And I think that we're more inspiring to others now than we ever were. There was a time not so long ago that people were ashamed to be Native American because we were looked down upon. People would move from the reservation. They didn't talk about it so much. That's not the case anymore now. We're very proud of our heritage, proud of our culture. And it's not that we were ever embarrassed of it. It's just that we were treated poorly, to say the least. But now as civilization and modern society searches for more meaning, they find that. And you'll see that. And the data that backs that up is the U.S. Census that recently in 2020 found that there was an impossible gain in the amount of Native American or people who identified as Native American, not necessarily that they had the blood, but that they wanted to be associated with something more. And I think the numbers went up like millions. I can't tell you exactly off the top of my head, but there's no way that we could have breeded that fast, that much. You know, it doesn't matter, polygamy, none of it. It just wouldn't happen. So I believe that there's a renaissance, and I believe that OurWorlds is leading part of that, and people like Dylan and culture keepers like Chairman Devers and Martha and Eric Ortega, who are our guiding light, and they are the one. Mike Connolly, I see you there, but you know we've never met, but I know that you're a culture leader. So, and Stan Rodriguez, who can't be with us tonight, and Martha, our prayers for him. But they're showing us the way, and they're carrying this torch with us. And the fact that they're supporting us and allowing us to work in this space and adapt our culture and evolve our culture in this way, and the fact that they're supportive of it and that they see the future means the world to me, and it means the world to people like Dylan and the younger generation who know that we have to carry the torch of our culture forward in a different way, but with the same passion that they do. And so with that, I want to open it up to the audience for questions. I promise we don't bite. Please, if anybody has a question on their mind, feel free to ask any of us. Thank you.
Test.
All right, with that.
Okay. I'm
Oh, we
coming.
got one right there. Yeah, we got one right
So on the app, I opened up the app before the talk tonight, and saw some guys rowing boats, two old boats. But does it take a picture of where you are and then identify that, like the GPS of that place, and then tell a story related to that special place, or how do you use it? I'm not sure.
Yeah, so there's two modes, and this is the source of a discussion internally. There's stories mode, and then there's lands mode. And there's a little toggle button, and that has caused some confusion. For those of you who have Apple iOS, please download. It's OurWorlds, all one word. Just type it into your Apple thing, phone, and to the App Store. But yeah, so lands mode allows you to see the territory on which you're sitting or standing or interacting with. So you could be in Canada, you could be in South America, you could be in North America, you could be in Hawaii, you could be a lot of places on the planet where our API and our database has that tribal territory recognized with our partner Native Lands Digital. And when you open up lands mode, instead of doing the kitschy land recognition that you see in emails or that you hear people say, like, we want to recognize a territory of whatever, that's great, but this is next level. So what it will do is it will, in augmented reality, display the name of the tribe whose ancestral land that is. We felt that that was a non-invasive, because so many people are ripping down statues, and they're so offended by whatever. Okay, so this is like an augmented reality, intangible, invisible way to acknowledge the people who were there if you choose to see it. But if not, nobody's offended. So that's lands mode. Stories mode, to me, is the bread and butter and the heart of what we are, which is telling these cultural stories, telling these stories from firsthand perspectives. Chairman Devers, Stan Rodriguez, and a list of our other contributors who yes, by geolocation, we can geofence or geolock that story native to where it is. So for example, when we worked with Choctaw, and by the way, our project has the endorsement of 27 tribes. Try to get 27 tribes to agree on anything. I'll put it that way. But so we have an endorsement of 27 tribes, including the Choctaw Nation, which is the second largest tribe in the United States. And we did a story about the Choctaw Code Talkers of 1918. And we have geolocated at the Choctaw reservation, at their memorial for their code talkers, the actual transmissions of what were used during World War I to help bring an end to the battle. And also in Washington, D.C. at the World War I memorial, also in France, in the Meuse-Argonne where the battle was fought. So the answer is yes, we can geofence, geolock stories where they are. And that gets back to the heart of one of the things that's so powerful about OurWorlds is that the technology itself can bring more meaning to the places where we live, where we work, where we travel. Imagine standing in Manhattan and you want to know what's there besides the building, besides all the buildings. So our software, in time, with enough funding and backing, you can peel back the hands of time and see the indigenous landscape, hear indigenous stories of the people who were there before, to bring more meaning to Manhattan. So it's not just pizza and lights and pawn shops and, you know, and all the activity, which is great, it's fun, and that's where we are, and we're going some really cool places. But sometimes people want to know more about the environment where they're standing, and that's what we're after worldwide. It's a long answer to your short question, sorry.
I have, I guess, 2 comments or maybe a question. I'm from Vietnam originally, but I went to school here, moved around the country, including Hawaii. And everywhere I went, I always sensed this connection. And I'm an outdoor person, camping, hiking, and trying to minimize my footprint on this planet. But I always sensed this, I was always in awe when everywhere I went, I knew there were people there long before Europeans and other immigrants came here. And I'm always touched and feel like connected with it. And today I was, I guess, maybe uninformed up to now, but I was surprised at many of the practices that you have regarding taking photograph, recording things, and certain things. My culture also had those things. So I grew up with them, and I always thought, oh, we're weird, we don't want to share photos, we don't want to take this and that. And something of our essence was, protected, and we wanted to. So that's one thing that I'm from the other side of the ocean. I guess maybe a long, long time ago we all came from. Some of us also, came much earlier. So that's one comment I have, that we are not that different. And then I recently had a very good fortune to go all the way down to Patagonia, and all the way down to the end, Tierra del Fuego, and backtrack all the way to Santiago. And everywhere when I was really surprised at, I guess, the people there, the indigenous people, was just starting to protest and raise awareness of how suppressed they were and what little culture and things that was preserved. I was fortunate to go to the pre-Columbian Museum in Santiago, so there was quite a bit of indigenous artifacts there. But one thing that I was very pleased is that our local tribal kind of identity on that, they present that also, some part of North American also, but there was just so many groups. And I think people just starting to kind of, awaken to the fact that even the European descents in South America were also very much, they talked about it, and they were very angry that how the Native Americans were, massacre. Maybe just that's the simplest word I can use.
Yeah,
so I was really touched by this when I came back, and I feel part of that. All of us, share in this humanity.
Yeah.
As sad as it sometimes has been. So
Yeah.
I'm grateful for this.
Yeah, thank you so much, and I'll just make a brief point. We don't look backwards. We know the atrocities, we know the history, we know the pain, we know the trauma, we know it very well. But that's not something that's built into the OurWorlds model. We look forward to the future collaboratively with institutions, with other communities, with other cultures, because if we're going to make it out of this mess, we have to do it together. There's no sense in looking back. And there are people who do that, and they want to fight about the past, and that's fine. That's their fight, but not ours at OurWorlds. We stay focused on the future, and we know that technology can bring about peace and change and understanding, and that's really what's built into our corporate charters. Are there any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
It's really not a question. I really wanted to express my gratitude for having had the opportunity to work with the Kumeyaay for many years on projects that we have in Kellogg Park and La Jolla Shores. And I'd like to invite all of you to come on October 14th, Saturday, 10 to 4. It's Walter Monk Day. He was here at Scripps for 80 years. And Michael Connolly will be one of the main speakers. We have a large bronze sculpture showing Mount Soledad to the shoreline and the shoreline to beyond where the canyons merge. And on that are different educational panels around it, and one of them will be the Kumeyaay cosmology and the stories behind each of those constellations is really incredible. So
Yeah.
I hope that you will all join us and bring the youth as well. There will be about 30 booths with interactive educational activities for the family.
And thank you for the invitation. And I've seen the work that La Jolla is doing to re-engage with the Native population. I went to La Jolla High School. My mom graduated from La Jolla High School in 1958. And so, you know, I grew up in La Jolla, and I didn't see as much as I do now. I know the La Jolla Historical Society recently did some featured exhibits of Native artists and stuff. So I see a resurgence of education about natives in La Jolla, and I'm very grateful for that. And also UCSD's been doing amazing work to re-engage. Are there any specific questions for the panelists before we break for the refreshments and the gallery exhibit? And Raul, are you here? Is Raul Christman here? No, I don't see. Okay. Lisa, did you have? Oh, here we go. What's up, Cedar?
Not for the panelists, but for OurWorlds. So I'm a officer for the American Indian Student Association at UCI, and I was wondering if OurWorlds is like planning to have any deeper connection with the UC system or schools like that. I know you were planning something at Dream the Impossible, and I know I'll be there, but do you have like plans to join or team up with like any of the UCs or other schools, universities in California?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We don't turn down invitations to work with universities. We feel that the students are the future. Actually, some of it has to come from the university. I mean, we can knock on doors, but if they don't open it, they're not letting us in. So, you know, if you want to tell your administrators to work with us, please do. If you want to get your student group together to work with us, please do. And that goes out to all the UCs. I mean, Catherine and I relentlessly knock on doors, call people, and they don't call us back. I mean, and honestly, it's their loss. It's your loss, because this is your culture. You know, maybe you're not Native, but like we're trying to build something for everybody. Does that make sense? Yeah. So anyways, great question. And the answer is, yeah, we love collaboration, especially with universities. Panelists, are there any final thoughts before we break?
You know, I want to take an opportunity to do a plug for an event coming up.
Antonio Guerra Day?
Antonio Guerra Day on Saturday, day after tomorrow. We're going to have an event in Old Town. Starts at 11 o'clock in the morning, goes till about 4. Antonio Guerra was one of the Cupeño Capitans in 1850. And when California became a state, San Diego was trying to build up and become a larger city, more important city. And they started taxing different people in the community and all around. And one of the things they did was they came up to the reservations. Well, they weren't reservations at the time, went up to the indigenous population and asked them if they could contribute. Well, actually didn't ask them, told them that they had to contribute. In fact, they wanted to call it a tax to help improve San Diego City. And the first year, 1850, they did contribute. The second year, they decided they weren't going to contribute. And you know, it goes back to the term taxation without representation, because at that time, Indians weren't even citizens of the United States. They ended up calling what happened afterward as the Antonio Gara Uprising. He was summarily captured and then taken down to San Diego to the courthouse, and he was tried and convicted of treason and executed. We don't dwell on the past, on what happened then, but what we do is take this as an opportunity to tell people, at least in Old Town and all the visitors and tourists that have come through there, tell people that the Native Americans are still here, and we do a celebration of life for Antonio Gara. We're going to have a procession that goes from the Immaculate Conception Church and goes to El Campo Santo Cemetery. Fred Litton is going to be saying some words. He's a descendant of Antonio Gara. Is going to say some words over the marker that's there in the cemetery. And then we're going to have a procession back into Old Town to the plaza where we'll do speeches and bird singing from 12 o'clock until 4 o'clock. That will include, we were going to have Stanley Rodriguez there. Don't know if we'll be able to be there to speak. He was going to be welcoming us in because one of the things we do acknowledge too is that San Diego Old Town is actually not Copeño territory traditionally. And so when we're having our event there, we'd like to have somebody from the Kumeyaay Nation to welcome us in and say it's okay for us to be there and have our celebration. Stan Rodriguez was on the list to be there. Maybe he'll be able to be there, maybe not. But we have several other people that may, at least do a welcoming. But we're expecting not just the welcoming from Dr. Stan Rodriguez, but the words, beautiful words that he would say that he always says every year when he does welcome us there, and the songs that he sings for us. Yeah. That's going to be followed by Will Madrigal, who teaches up at UC Riverside. He's going to have some words from the Cahuilla point of view. And then after that is going to be Elijah Doro, Paul Atingva singers. And then we're going to have a special guest, Joel Anderson, is going to come by and provide a proclamation.
Senator. Is he still a senator?
Joel Anderson is the Board of Supervisors, County Board of Supervisors.
Now he's on the Board of Supervisors? Okay.
Yeah. And that will be followed by
Senator
Chris Ward, who's Assemblyman for San Diego. And then Assemblyman James Ramos is going to be there as well to speak. The theme for this year's event is going to be how the tribes actually contribute to surrounding communities. One of the things that we wanted to share is that a lot of times people talk about how reservations don't get taxed by the state. And that's kind of ambiguous because we have businesses on the reservation, and any non-tribal members that work there do pay taxes. And when it comes to like gaming in San Diego County, I think there's like 7,000 employees that are involved in gaming, and a lot of them pay taxes. So there's a lot of money going to the state from the gaming industry.
And the revenue sharing. So we don't pay tax, but we do a revenue sharing of 8% from our reservation. Other tribes have different negotiations, but it's funny. Yeah, we don't pay tax. We do revenue sharing with the state. So call it a tax, if you will, of 8%. Eric, what's the date again and the time?
The 18th.
The 18th at what time?
At 11 o'clock, starting at
Old Town.
Immaculate Conception Church, but the actual event's going to be in the plaza at 12 o'clock noon.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so I'd like to just kind of close out, adjourn the panel again. Eric Ortega, an elected member of the Bonsall School Board, cultural expert. Paula, radio station host and professional interviewer and culture keeper. Martha Rodriguez, wife of Stan and the director and owner of the Kosai Kumeyaay Market in Old Town. Dylan Luna, our musical composer, who also studied and graduated from what was the name of the school in LA?
Musicians Institute.
Yeah, in Los Angeles, and has done work with TV, and now he's working with our Paula tribe, doing some musical work with a lot of the talent that comes through there at the casino, really super famous people. and former chairman of the Palma tribe, Chris Devers, elder, veteran, and somebody who I've looked up to for a long time. So I'd like to close out with a blessing, and then if everybody after the blessing can sit down for just 2 seconds, because we want to introduce Miss Kumeyaay Nation before we break for the refreshments and the exhibit. So, Chairman Devers.
Would you like to do a closing?
Words.
Oh, just word. Oh,
Prayer.
okay. My ha ye hampuk nachis nyawe shamis de hampi ye hampuk nachis matayume hantanywe kunya kunyawe shamis de hantanywe nyawe nama wa hantanywe ye hampuk nachis terchas de hanfahan ye han.
Thank you. Good job. Stay standing?
Yeah.
What? Yeah.
Are you closing out, or was that?
She just,
Great. See, that's one of the things about tribes I love. We broke this glass ceiling so long ago. We have female tribal chiefs. We have female culture keepers.
but
Like,
also it's part of,
yeah, deferring.
no, I opened it,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
this is part of her traditional territory.
I love
She
it.
closed it.
I love that. See, this is tribal stuff. I love this. Okay, and then do you want to introduce and then we'll break?
So we're very fortunate to have in the audience here with us tonight, Miss Kumeyaay Nation 2023, Miss Priscilla Ortiz La Chapa. Everyone give her a round of applause. She just came back from South by Southwest with us. We did a panel on XR AI and the future of language revitalization. Would you like to say a few words?
I may have the title of Miss Kumeyaay Nation, but Martha is the true Miss Kumeyaay Nation doing all the good work around here. So, thank you for being here and for all the work that you do with us over at KCC with our kids in Sequan, Yehan, Chiehan, and Nyupum, Yehan, Pukna, Ipenyamapi, Puknachis. You guys are going to help us spread the word of this work. And I'm a language learner right now, so that's why I kind of cut myself off because I was like, I know I can't say all this. But thank you guys for choosing, time to come here tonight and be present with us and learn about this and hopefully share it with your communities, your families back home. Yehan.
And also, Little Miss Kumeyaay Nation, Maya. Just stand up. Congratulations. So thank you all so much for attending tonight, and without further ado, shall we? We'll just go and enjoy some refreshments.
Yeah, make yourself at home with the refreshments, and we'll see you in the exhibit. Please stop by and see the exhibit in the QI gallery. Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you very much.
I'll just